With us is freshman Virginia State Senator Bryce Reeves. He's one of the new Richmond young guns of the GOP. He represents the 17th district, and his win is what enabled the Republicans in the Virginia State Senate in 2011 to take control with the tie-breaking vote of incumbent Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling. How are you, Bryce?
Good morning, John. Good morning.
Happy to have you on. And let's get to a couple quick issues. Let's go first to, speaking of Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling, he is not running for re-election. There are 7 announced candidates on the GOP side vying for the Republican nomination for Lieutenant Governor. That's going to be decided at a GOP state convention in Richmond in May. And Senator, very early, a couple weeks ago, you came out, made the endorsement for Virginia businessman and entrepreneur Pete Snyder as a state senator. You're also one of the co-chairs of his campaign. What is it that inspired your endorsement of Pete Snyder for lieutenant governor, Senator, so early in this race?
Well, let me first say thank you for having me on this morning, and thank you to the voters, especially in the 17th, that allow me to serve them each and every day in Richmond. I'm probably unique as a newly minted senator in the sense that, I've always been one of those leaders that says what I mean to say it, and I'm not very shy about saying it. And I know leadership when I see it as a former Army Ranger. I get it. And, I had the great opportunity to work with Pete over the last year. Although we weren't successful, we worked really hard and worked really well together in the victory campaign. And, in a lot of sense, victory chairman in Virginia is, some people think it's just there for glory. Pete turned it into actually working hard, which was really it was some days it's very difficult to work with the folks in Boston to let them understand how Virginia works. But Pete's one of those guys. He's a self-made entrepreneur. People said he couldn't do it, just like people told me I couldn't be the 28-year incumbent, and he got it done. He built a multi-million-dollar media company that has set the standard in the industry today. He understands technology advancement. One of the key things that Governor McDonnell has done is turn the lieutenant governor position into chief jobs creation officer. And if you look at the candidates that are out there for lieutenant governor right now, and that it's a big field, Pete's the only one who's got the credentials to do it. I mean, he understands business. He's from Northern Virginia. He understands technology, which is a huge chunk of business in Northern Virginia, and he's a job creator. And, despite what we want to talk about politics, that's what this country needs. That's what Virginia needs. He understands the bigger workings of how to start these things. And, some people ask, well, how will he do presiding over the Senate? Well, listen, I learned the rules of the Senate in about 3 days, so it's not that hard to learn. I think he'll do a great job. I think he'll get out there. He'll put Virginia first, and he'll work hard. And that's what we need. We need leadership that can work on both sides of the aisle, that understand the bigger impact of legislation, that can build coalitions, and he's got strong conservative credentials. I didn't have a voting record before I ran, but you can certainly tell by what I voted for and what kind of legislation I have in that I'm pro-business and I'm conservative, and we can still move Virginia in the right direction by adhering to those principles. And that's what's made us successful, and I think he'll be successful.
Well, I appreciate that explanation, State Senator, and certainly I did a column a couple weeks ago urging Snyder to get into the race because we see him as somebody that's going to bring some bigger ideas into the fray. And, right off the bat, he called for an elimination of the Virginia corporate income tax. He called for a change in the constitution of the state to make it easier for a startup charter schools to come in. Those were 2 big things off the bat. What do you think of those?
Well, again, you've got to look and see where Pete comes from. I mean, that's just a natural flow of business for him. You know, he wants to bring businesses to Virginia. He wants to compete in a global environment. You know, his technology company that he built, media, web-based media, you know, it's global. And if you look at some of the clients that he brought in with his old firm, New Media Strategies, he gets it. And so that doesn't surprise me. Some people are surprised by that. I'm not surprised by that at all. You know, he's got a lot of young people, 20-something-year-olds that are coming out of college that have these degrees in technology and information systems and those things. And Pete rallies those young people. I mean, you were at the Advance. You saw 40-plus young people coming out and working for him. And I think he brings that kind of spirit to it. And he understands that education is just not only for earning a living, but it's for learning to live, to serve, and to lead. And he gets that. And so he sees that, you know, we've got to work on education and getting our young people adapted. I'll give you a great example. Yesterday, I was with Leader Cantor, and we were at the Marine Corps base observing some of their warfighter capabilities with regard to their new technology. And the Marine Corps is building their systems on, from the ground up, what's coming out of Afghanistan in our wars and what these young Marines want and how do they drop the payload yet give them the technology they need. And it's amazing the systems communications that they have. Most of the young people coming in our armed services today, you know, they didn't grow up with Ma Bell and a turn dial phone or even a tone phone anchored to the wall. They understand PDAs and those sorts of things. And so the Marine Corps is working on how to shoot, move, and communicate and be able to use these. And these young people coming out already have that technology base. So you know, even for a three-star general yesterday commented that, you know, for him, he's having to relearn this, but the young Marines that come out already know this system, and they know the technology. And so harnessing that is going to be key, and I think that's what Pete understands and where Pete's headed.
Common Sense Time is 8:20 on the John Frederick Show. Steve Ray in with John this morning, and we have as our guest State Senator Bryce Reeves. And let's talk about one of your major accomplishments here as a freshman. The Senate's Privileges and Elections Committee recently passed a bill that called for amending the state's constitution to guarantee voter privacy in union elections, as timely as today's headlines on the right-to-work decision in Michigan. And that, my friends, was Senator Reeves' bill. You introduced the measure, didn't you? And was that in response to the method known as a card check, which is essentially secret ballot elections?
That's correct, John. I actually saw this coming last year and introduced the bill last year, and it was held over because it's a constitutional amendment. And so, you know, I saw that encroachment early on, started to formulate what we should do, worked with my leadership, Senator McDougal, on the issue, and we put the bill in. I put the bill in last year, and we got it out of committee this summer. And, you know, timing's everything. I think it brings it to the forefront. In fact, I saw the blog this morning from the Washington Post that it's out there now. So, you know, I do anticipate a fight. I saw where a reporter got assaulted up there and all these sorts of things. So it's just a fundamental right. I mean, you know, if people are blowing up there, the unions are, because, you know, they can't hamstring these folks to take this automatic withdrawal out of their paychecks now. So they finally have the right, these union workers have the right to say, you know what, I'm going to be part of the union, but I'm going to pay the dues when I want to pay my dues, not have you yank it out automatically out of my paycheck. And some folks, that gives them options. And, you know, I think what that's done is really freed up some of these folks that are part of the union. I think I saw yesterday when I was reading, somewhere almost 70% of those folks who voted for it or wanted this to go through up there were union folks. And so it's really a fundamental right, whether you're union, whether you're not union, but the right to a secret ballot, to walk in and be able to cast your ballot, to me is something that, you know, I raised my right hand and swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and I think this is one of those rights.
Do you believe that this is one of those things that isn't really a Virginia issue but a national issue? Do you hope this becomes something that we can get through the legislature up on the Hill here in D.C.?
Listen, for a long time, I've always said, and a lot of other leaders have said this too, the government that works best is that closest to the people. And if some folks will say, well, this is a solution looking for a problem because we don't have that issue in Virginia. Well, guess what? We do. We have about 110,000 union workers in Virginia. And you see it all the time, this encroachment of trying to gobble up more. And so, listen, I want to put a stop to it right away. Let's put the block in, and let's set the standard so Washington can model that. And I do think we need to head that direction. I also think we ought to have a balanced budget amendment. We talk about revenue, and let's not kid ourselves, John. When the left talks about revenue, it's taxes. And we need to address spending. We're forced to do that because we have a balanced budget amendment, and that we're forced to do that. And guess what? After a few times of doing that, you get used to it, and people have to make decisions. And that's what we got hired for, is to make hard decisions.
There's no question with that. And speaking of hard decisions, Senator, the state Senate of Virginia in 2011, this past session, in many ways became a target of late-night jokes on the comedy shows and was taken up for ridicule with some of the, what you might call, extreme social measures that the state Senate took up, one being the transvaginal probe, that infamous piece of legislation, the other trying to restrict access to legal abortions by some. And as a result of that, we think that it took the eye off the ball of the important economic issues we have in the state, like how to fix transportation, how to create jobs, things like that. What is going to happen in this upcoming session? Do you see a repeat of that, or do you see a different emphasis?
Well, let me clarify a couple things to your listeners on that topic, John. Let me give you the real, what we call in the military, the G2, okay, the intel, is, listen, we didn't really have a combined coordination on some of this legislation that went through. And the left told us early on that they weren't going to vote for any judges or the budget unless there was a power share agreement in the Senate, period. They said that from day one, and the reality is we should have believed them, because that's why they voted no for the budget each and every time. In fact, we didn't even have a bill to put out because we couldn't get it through, and the lieutenant governor couldn't vote on it. And so, after the Democrats got kind of beat up over the head for being obstructionist, this bill, transvaginal ultrasound bill, of which I got to tell you, I think helps women make a logical, rational decision. And if you look at Planned Parenthood, they do them already anyway. And what happened was they just said, hey, listen, here's something we can beat up the Republicans with, and it's a hot button issue, and we can get out from under the thumb of this being obstructionist on the budget because we're not voting for judges of the budget, and people think that's wrong, and that was wrong. And so we'll throw this back at them. And quite frankly, they did a pretty good job of picking up the football and throwing it at us, and it did get us sidetracked. And when we finally got that issue resolved, guess what? We were back to the budget. So do I anticipate that coming up? This absolutely, because the Democrats are going to put in about trying to repeal it, I'm sure, because it's still a bright, shiny object, and they're going to pick it up, and they're going to say, hey, look at this, and we're trying to repeal it, and here's these Republicans again beating up on women, and that's just not the case. And so, what I've found in my year already is you could have the perfect bill to cure cancer, okay, legislative bill to do that, fund it, everybody's happy. And then you have this thing, and it's called mold. I call it mold, and it's politics, and it gets on there, and you can't get it off. And so there's a lot of good legislation out there that does a lot of good for Virginia, but once politics gets on it, it's very difficult to get it off. And so one of the things that I've really tried to work on is to work with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle because, listen, Republicans don't have a monopoly on ideas. And there's some good stuff that we need to get done. And so, my focus is going to be on where we go with sequestration, How do we do that? How do we implement that? How do we take care of our veterans? As a caucus co-chair of the military caucus, my focus is going to be on Virginia and our military and our veterans. And so we're gonna continue to work hard. And we still need some answers to some of these questions that we have before we go in January 9th. But I'm confident that we'll be able to get some good stuff done.
State Senator Republican from the 17th District, Bryce Reeves, has been with us here on the John Frederick Show. Senator, we appreciate your hard work, and we appreciate your time and being with us, and especially your candor. And we hope to have you back as the State Senate goes into session for a short 45-day session in January. And hopefully, as you say, we can get some of these looming problems resolved, especially transportation in the state, where we can't seem to come to agreement to solve it in any meaningful way. Senator, thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
John, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.